Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing Disney's 2017 star-studded live remake of their 1991 animated timeless classic, The Beauty and the Beast. This time around, directed by Bill Condon. The movie is based on the same story as the original animation, the circa 1940 French fairy tale of the same name, by, and apologies for the pronunciation, Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont. For all intents and purposes, the live-action movie is pretty much true to the original animation. So, okay, it doesn't follow the exact story 100%. There are a few diversions along the way and a few new sequences to kind of pad out the affair, but it is pretty close, bringing us all of the characters and the songs that we kind of loved from the original, whilst also adding a kind of few new ones into the mix as well. In the movie, we learn that a spoiled, egotistical prince, as played by Adam Mitchell, once had a run-in with an old beggar woman who had turned up at his castle asking for shelter, offering a rose in return. The same similar story. The prince was repulsed by her appearance and her offer, and so humiliated the beggar in front of his royal audience. Turns out that beggar woman was actually a beautiful enchantress in disguise, as played by Rita Davies at that point, I believe. And not happy with the arrogance and the narrow-mindedness of the prince, she cast a spell on him, the castle, and all of its inhabitants, turning him into a hideous beast and his servants into enchanted objects around the castle, and in the process wiping the memory of them from the local townsfolk. The spell would only be broken if, by the time the last petal fell on the rose, he could truly love another, and that this love was returned. We then fast forward in time a number of years to meet the young, independent, charismatic, and very strong character of Belle, as played by Emma Watson. Kind of with a real loving, kind and considerate individual with a real thirst for life, a love of books and great stories, and happy to define her own path in life, not wanting to settle for the template that people in the town expect, nor the hand-in-marriage of the town's resident jock, Gaston, as played by Luke Evans, a self-styled male specimen, but really just simply a tool. Her father, Maurice, as played by Kevin Kline, gets lost in the woods, as he did in the original, on a trip to showcase one of his inventions, and ends up seeking refuge in a nearby castle, inhabited, of course, by the Beast, who takes Maurice prisoner after a temper-fueled rage. Not long after, Belle goes in search of her father and also happens upon the castle, and ultimately trades places with her father, where, although angry and bitter at first, through a series of events thereafter, she slowly grows to like, perhaps even love, the Beast, as does the Beast start to mellow and fall in love with Belle. Will true love prevail? Will Belle fall for the Beast and break the spell? So, the live-action remake then. Where does it stand when compared to the original animation? Which is, as I detailed in my review for that movie, my wife, Leslie, it's her favourite Disney classic. The original stands out as such a landmark movie for many reasons and is just simply breathtakingly exquisite. And so to kind of remake this movie was kind of like treading on glass for many, as I'm sure. Is it a worthy successor or simply a cash grab by the studio? Well, for me, in my opinion, this actually did a fairly decent job. Really did, recreating some of the magic of the original movie. Not all, and certainly not to the same extent. But it was still full of wonder and imagination, and was itself very breathtaking in the way that it was filmed, its cinematography. The one thing I can say in earnest is that this movie was certainly a visual treat, with all aspects of its cinematography being dazzling, epic, and very much in keeping with the splendour and the magnificence of the original animation. That element of the film had me captivated. As touched on earlier, it did stay fairly true to the overall story that was used in the original animation, tweaking things, a few things here, there, and there, and kind of padding out some of the backstory of some of the characters, particularly for Beast and Belle, which wasn't present in the original film. However, I would say that the original material, for me, didn't really add anything new or develop the story further to an extent that kind of drew me in to it in any way more than what the film had already, We had a segment about Belle's past that only served to kind of show her longing to travel and to revisit places from her childhood. And we kind of get to see what happened to her mother. But this was never really further developed within the story. And so ultimately, it felt flat and seemed surplus to requirements. We also touched on the role that the servants actually had in the young prince's behaviour. Their punishment had for me, always felt a bit over the top. And so I think to some extent, this film did kind of try to rectify that, misgiving. This time around, the servants themselves took some of the blame for not speaking up more and simply doing nothing to change the prince's behaviour. Still, it's still harsh in my book. And in the end, this seemed to try and deflect away from the prince holding somebody else accountable, when in actual fact, it was all him and nobody else. More likely, a yarn he'd kind of spun to keep them from throwing a mutiny, This time around, we also had more of an influence that the enchantress had kind of a more grander plan, and is actually in the background observing the events in plain sight. But again, like quite a lot of the new material in the movie, it isn't used to any great extent, nor explored in kind of any significant or meaningful way. It was nice to see, however, the new interpretations of the enchanted characters, which made the original so magical. Particularly Lumiere, a candelabra as played by Ewan McGregor, and Cogsworth, a clock as played by Ian McKellen, who were particularly spot on, in my opinion. And absolutely great fun to watch. Each are finely detailed, and a real treat to see in action once again. The whole ensemble of enchanted characters have really been treated with grace and respect from those kind of depicted in the original animation, and they're just simply captivating and a real treat to watch. Emma Thompson, she took over the role of Mrs. Potts, and although in this instance she did give a very decent performance overall, it just simply couldn't, never been as powerful as that given by Angela Houston. No, not Angela Houston, that's the Witches. Angela Lansbury, my apologies, in the original. Her rendition of The Beauty and the Beast in that ballroom was simply out of this world, and still brings a tear to my eye every time. Thompson's rendition in this movie is sublime enough, don't get me wrong. Just nowhere near as powerful, nor emotional. It's a classic scene you're never going to replace, to be fair. It was a hard sell. I did think Emma Watson did an okay job playing Belle, although at times it did kind of look like she was simply playing it by the numbers for me. When she kind of did inject her own charisma into the character, it did actually play out well on screen. And I must admit, by the end, she had brought the character of Belle into her own. But for me, One standout character that does deserve an honourable mention in this movie, for me, was Gaston in this rendition. It really did look and feel like Luke Evans was having an absolutely great fun playing this role. You could pretty much see it in his face throughout. And although he was the villain of the piece, it was great fun watching him develop the character through and through. You really got a feel for just what a nasty piece of work he really could be. In terms of music, all of the original songs, I believe, are present. Well, bar one, and that was Human Again. I don't think that was in. I mean, that was added into the animated film for its special edition release. And I don't think it was in this film at all. But all the rest are present. I'm correct. As is Alan Menken, who originally penned the songs with the late Howard Ashman. Again, these are presented with fantastic visual splendour and are a real testament to the original creation. What stood out for me particularly well was the comedy and the input of the townsfolk into the songs, particularly in the songs Belle and Gaston. I feel that their efforts, even though they're only the supporting cast, really did help to bring those pieces alive in a real noticeable way. The movie does actually feature a number of new songs, specifically composed for the film. But to me, they didn't hold a candle, or candelabra, to the original songs, which are, they're just simply iconic. And again, felt more akin to padding out the film than to moving the plot forward, which I always felt that the original songs did very well. Honestly, stood here today, I can't actually remember any of them. And I think that kind of speaks volumes in itself, to be quite fair. Overall, I think this was still truly a very magical and captivating film. It was certainly a very visual film, and its cinematography was just simply divine. It was a real visual treat, and in that it paid an exceptional tribute to the original. That itself, of course, being a very colourful, vibrant and exquisitely animated film. Recreating such an iconic classic was always going to be a tricky task in getting everything just right. And of course, in pleasing the fans. So, they had a hard job to do this. It does handle the original characters with care, and you can certainly tell that this was a real labour of love for the whole ensemble. And so I do truly believe that this was a sincere attempt by everybody involved to try and bring us something of pure wonder and spectacle. And in that, I do believe that they certainly succeeded. Do I think it's as good as the original? No. It's padded out far too much for what was actually needed, which made it kind of drag way more than it ever should. Elements of the story were explained in more detail than what was required to serve the overall plot, and others were kind of brought in, but never further utilised, making them pretty redundant, all told. But it's a worthy attempt at recreating the original captivation we experienced with the original animation, albeit just not quite as powerful. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. We'd definitely love to have you back. But most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.